Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Dutch Speed Son. This is Raging Verbalist number 339. For those of you keeping track and those who are new, welcome. Those who've been here for a while, glad you're back. We happen every week on YouTube and also on my Facebook group, which is Position to Win book, which just happens to be my book. So, all right. Well, let's talk about what we're going to go into today. I usually don't dive much into politics, but today we're talking about a topic which is kind of out there and hot, and it merges technology and what's going on. So we're going to talk about RAM prices. That's random access memory. And for those of you who are not really aware of what's going on, prices have gone up considerably in the last little bit. And let's talk about why this has happened and get you all caught up to speed here. Number one is the realities of supply and demand and why so why are people surprised by it? Well, first off, AI is using significant more RAM than we had anticipated anything using recently. I'm not surprised by this, but I guess people were kind of caught out by that. By the way, I wasn't uh, precognitive enough to go out and buy Micron stock when I should have, but yikes, and there you go. Now, frankly, RAM prices, though they are up, are not at the ridiculous heights. If you want to really look at it, the reason why the RAM market is the way it is that it is like the worst market to be in as a vendor. And it's the worst one because the most expensive RAM was when we first started out. And that was like in the 1970s. And people like Intel were still in the RAM business. And you couldn't buy RAM for love nor money. I mean, it was $1,000 to $5,000 a kilobyte. That's right, a kilobyte. And in fact, so just as a comparison, this is 64 gigabytes of, now it isn't RAM, but it's the same type of thing because what you're doing is you're buying gates. I probably paid, I don't know, I bought that when they were cheap. So there you go. People usually don't buy them that much, but really, if you look at it, RAM started at a very high number and has been going down precipitously. And in fact, all the way through to the 80s, the 90s to today, and but now, of course, we're talking about there's a shortage, and there's a shortage because, well, we have AI on us. So just keep that in mind. And this is not the first time that RAM prices have gone up. Now, frankly, this is part of what I call the expectation crash. So if you go out there and you eat a lot of sugary stuff and you get that buzz and everything, well, eventually your body crashes on that. Well, we've been on a buzz crash for for RAM for quite a bit because RAM prices just kept going down and down and down and down. Who wanted to buy a RAM company? But there are still people making it. In fact, there are only three manufacturers. One is Samsung, and the other is let me make sure I got it, is Micron, and the next one is, and these guys just went public in the U.S., which is I think is SK Hynix, Hynix. By the way, their stock is not doing so great when I looked at it just a couple of days ago. Now, here's the reality. Now, people have this poor memory and they have this expectation that RAM prices are only going to go one direction, which is down. And no, it is not going to just keep going down. See, in the 1980s, I lived through the RAM crisis. I was selling computers left, right, and center, and we actually couldn't get enough RAM no matter what the price. And in fact, we were on allocation. Allocation sucks if you're a manufacturer and you don't have enough capability. And that's how the world works. Supply and demand. Supply is constrained. There's only three manufacturers. And if you say, geez, I want to get into the RAM business, you got to have your head examined because RAM prices go through a great number of cyclical booms and terrible busts. And every time it goes through a bust, it seems like we lose another supplier. Maybe this time we don't. Maybe we're just stuck with these three, and that's the way it goes. But we were on allocation, and allocation just absolutely sucks because we had to charge customers the price that we were charging for the computer plus a premium to pay for excess RAM or not excess, for extra RAM. Now, this is just the reality. But almost 3 years ago, I started telling clients if they were going to buy a new laptop, a new server, a new PC of any kind, even a cell phone, that they should be getting as much RAM as they possibly could and as much storage as they possibly could. Very few actually paid heed to that because they said, well, I've got what I've got and it's okay. For those of you who went out and bought well, whatever it was, 4 gigabytes of RAM laptop for your people because, well, Windows said it would work on that. That was bullshit. My laptop that I have, my Dell, which is my PC laptop, has 40 gigs. Now, this was a weird configuration, and in fact, it didn't sell well because it doesn't have a touch screen. I don't need a touch screen, but thank goodness I've got it. All I can tell you is RAM helps out, but I can tell you that most people don't. Now, this is before, and by the way, I bought that on a killer deal. And all my Macs have, well, I try to get them all with 16 gigs or more. And yes, Apple charges a lot for them. Got it. That's the price you pay. That's the premium it is. But all I'm going to tell you is that this is the reality. AI is going to consume massive, massive amounts of memory. And while so many people question whether or not we're going to need it, all I can tell you is, as well, the reality is more, more, more. That's the watchword. And it has been so. Back in time when I was selling very high speed computing for the time, 1985, we came out with what I called the most wonderful memory board you could ever see for this product. And it was 8 megabytes. Yes, you have to gear your head down a little bit. And it was $5,000 a megabyte or $40,000 to the board. And we couldn't build them fast enough. The reality is that if you're doing high speed things, then AI is very, very much a consuming force. It just absorbs all of the capability it can throw at it. And that's going to keep happening. So more and more and more. Now, given today's prices, I want you to think about how much RAM you can afford today with an understanding that tomorrow you're probably going to need, and here's an estimate from me. If I could say take it to the bank, I would, but I won't. We're going to probably need 4 to 8 times as much memory. Now, people are going to say, John, that's ridiculous. Well, I think we're going to be running models on our own machines and doing our own thing. I think that AI is going to be so pervasive and it's going to take over things. And you're going to say, but do I really need that? All I can tell you is I run into people all the time who say, John, my people just aren't as productive as I'd like them to be. Now, again, I'm coming in as a marketing, advertising, and sales expert, a business expert. And it's almost always that their computers are starving. I mean, modern operating systems can work around all of this stuff, but the penalty is in response time. And guess what? Expectations of that from customers has just gone up. So what we consider today exorbitant, I think, is going to become standard in just a few short years. That's my prediction. And I think every business needs to understand that AI is not a blip. It is here to stay. And this is just a reality of what we're at today. And we're on a new and a different road. And we've just seen the beginning of this. And just for full effect, the first RAM upgrade I ever bought for a computer was my first computer that I bought, which was an Apple II. And I bought a 16 kilobyte RAM extender because I bought a 48 kilobyte machine and I bought a Microsoft. Yeah, they were in the hardware business at one time. 16 kilobyte and it got me to 64 kilobytes. All I can tell you is that, boy, those days are long gone. I mean, nobody has files that small anymore, let alone a computer running off of it. So the reality of it is that RAM prices, chaos or order. This is the order of it today. Will it change in the future? Invariably, it will. Will they ever get down to where they were before? Don't know. Probably will, because the RAM market has never, ever stayed high for forever. Now, the reality is you buy what you need today, buy what you can possibly afford, but always say that you're going to need more, more, more. Now, for those of you who want to be in business long term and want to have more and more and more business, pick up my book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 years. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, position to win. And you can pick it up on a variety of different ways. You can go in and get it from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, wherever books are sold. You can go get a physical copy. You can also come to my website, positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Also, you can get it digitally from Kindle, Apple iBooks, and Barnes & Noble Nook. And all I can say is, hopefully you're going to have enough RAM to run what you need to run. All I can tell you is that we're all going to consume more. And I'm glad that I upped all of my RAM in every machine that I possibly could before the insanity hit. And that is that it's not going to go back anytime soon. Until next time, this is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and this has been the Raging Verbalist number 339. See you next time.